All right, so William, let's do this. I am going to stop the share. And how are you today, my friend?
Doing wonderful, man. Doing wonderful. Thanks for inviting me on.
Of course, I know Rosemary's been a regular on here, and she's been getting plenty out of this because of a lot of our guests and what have you. And honored to have you. I've known you a long time. You know, one of the things about you, I love your name, by the way. I've never actually told you that, but William Edge is such a badass name. But you got another name too. Some call you Billy Turner. So William Edge, Billy Turner, same guy, huh?
Edge is my middle name. It's my mother's maiden name.
Gotcha.
So I never really used it growing up because the edge for you too was really big. So there was only, you had a name like that, there could only be room for one. So I never really used it until I got into the business. So
we can call you Billy or we can call you William. I tend
absolutely
to call you William
absolutely.
just because,
As long as somebody's talking to me, I'm happy.
All right, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I invited you is because you're a very smart guy, and you also always have your own perspective on things, and your perspective, I think, is an important one to hear today. And you and I, we spent a little bit of time together prepping, and I think the topics that we're going to get into are going to be very relatable to the group that's joining us today. So anyway, let me, William, let me just tell the group a little bit about your business. So you have, and you can fill in the blanks, you are 2 locations and an institute. Your head count is around 40. I know that you have done something that very few have done that are part of our 2 to 10 community. It's you've crossed state lines. You went into Tennessee, but your base business is in New Braunfels, Texas, right?
Yeah, I have downsized from 8 to 2.
8 to 2.
Yeah, so I'm going the opposite way of your 2 to 10 plan, I think. So I'm barely in the door now. I'm still at 2, but so I can still be a part of it. But yeah, I've gone from 8 to 2 salons. And
what's the time frame for that? How many of them was 8 to 2 during the pandemic?
Months.
What's that?
24 months.
Okay.
So 6 in the last 24 months I've closed.
And they've all been out of, all the out of state ones. So you're just in Texas now, right?
5. We've had 5 out of state and 1 in state, or 4 out of state, 2 in state.
That closed?
That closed.
And so right now your 2 locations are just in Texas.
Just in Texas. Yeah.
It's
in New Braunfels.
Okay.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about 2 to 10 that I've observed being a student of this market is salons that have, these unbelievable regional chains like yours, like the Gordons. I mean, there's so many people on this call. I could call out Reflect, Ilof, Jean Madeline. One of the things that I've learned as we've studied this is it is pretty rare for salons to cross state lines. And at the time, I think you were like the only one during 2 to 10. Fakai also had crossed state lines. It's not that it isn't done, but you're kind of bringing it back home is what it comes to.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about availability. It's all about being able to be available in those places. So, I mean, state lines is no different than the next city over.
Right.
Just you have to have the ability to get there. And so when that changes, then you've got to change the scope of the business, So that was, as you know, that was kind of forced on me. So that's what we ended up doing. The smart move was to bring it all back and build it strong again.
Yeah. So some of the things that is on your mind is I've got some notes from the conversation. I'm actually going to pull it up. First of all, we're talking a little bit about leadership and beauty today and where it's coming from versus in the past, staying relevant and getting people's attention. So let's have you go there for a little bit.
Well, when I look at leadership, I look at it as simply a way of influencing others towards an end that is recognized as valuable or fulfilling. Now, the question is who's recognizing it as valuable and fulfilling? There was a long time where as leaders, we could set up direction that we knew would help people be successful. there would be a little bit of trust because of the experience that we had that will allow people to follow that system. And then when they get through the years of, when they get through the process of doing that, then all of a sudden they're making great money, they are successful, and then we have an ally. So today the question is, when you look at leadership being, simply a way of influencing others towards a recognized end as valuable or fulfilling to them, we've got to look at who's influencing that, right? So if the leader is the one who's influencing it, that's what's changed today for me for a lot. I mean, I think, the new teachers are YouTube, the new influencers are Instagram people, it's like this whole virtual world that really doesn't have a soul to it or a backbone to it or a tangible asset to it, really has taken a seat that we now have to figure out how to dethrone if we really want to be the impact for people to grow and figure out how to make that coexist with us, but actually how do we take over the leading spot of that? It's like, there's two types of learning in our world, especially in the beauty industry. There's the intellectual learning and the physical learning. So no matter what, if we're in the beauty industry, we have to get people to understand the physical learning. And that to me is the travesty of virtual, right? Because in virtual, we check it off. We're in a society that is at a time where we have so much information. I mean, it is, anything we want is right here. I mean, right in front of us. So I end up having these kids that they'll check off I know how to do that. I know how to do that. I know how to do that because they've seen it. It's explained easy, but their hands can't do it, right? And therefore that brings up a whole nother frustration because we're also dealing with a generation that doesn't know how to fail because they've been propped up, right? Like it or not, I mean, that's just the way it's been. Schools are not as competitive. They're not as hard. They're not as, parenting is softer than it's ever been. So all of these things, when it relates to the professional working world, means that we have a different psychology that we have to put in place that's going to help us or hurt us, whichever way we tend to go with it, And so, I've got to figure out in my world, how do I become the influencer of getting people to an end result that they deem as valuable and fulfilling? And, so what keeps me up at night is just how do I stay relevant? As you get older, that's always the case, right? How do I stay relevant to these young guys? How do I stay relevant to a clientele? How do I stay relevant to a business community? How do I stay relevant to my social community? So relevance to me is such a huge thing today. Like, how do I become relevant into the world? When we're surrounded by potential team members that have probably a pretty extreme difference in work ethic than what we possess, I would say, as entrepreneurs. How do we make that, work for us? Because it's probably the first time that we do not have traditional business as an ally. I can't fall back on, people aren't looking for companies and saying, all right, well, who's successful? What are they doing? I want to, there were years where people would come and have an apprentice program for 2 years, a year, whatever it was, because they knew they were going to be successful. They saw the path. They saw the product that was produced. They saw that they could get where they wanted to be. That's not the case anymore. So it's really a time today where resumes really mean very little. It's really about, where are you now? What are you doing? And so today's pace and the effect of today's change is really unprecedented.
Yeah. So Lisa just put work ethic is vanishing. Very interesting. And I've got a comment to this that is.
Well, to me, what that really means is our work ethic is vanishing, right? What we deem as work ethic is vanishing, right? So if you go back to that concept of leadership, where you're trying to get people to an end result that is recognized as valuable and fulfilling, it can't be for us. It's like, the real idea is work ethic as we know it is vanishing.
Yeah, I got a couple thoughts on this. First of all, I see Austin Randolph is on the call. Austin, good morning. We're not going to turn the mic on, but I'm interested in you weighing in on this. Austin is part of our emerging leaders group at 2 to 10, and he's part of the generation that we're speaking about. I'd love to see what you put in the chat screen right now, Austin. And then the other thing, William, we're gonna move on to brick and mortar in a moment here, but I want to make a final comment before we move over to that sort of space. And that is what's coming to mind for me when I'm listening to you is that there's definitely generational differences that can't be denied. And one of the things that was a eye opener for me is a book. I love the quote by, I can't remember if it's Emerson or Thoreau, forgive me, but it's from a transcendentalist. And that is that many can date the beginning of a new era with the reading of a book, okay? And not that this particular book identified the beginning of a new era for me, but there is a book called, and I believe the name, Michelle, you can research this offline. I believe it's called Wisdom at Work, and it's by Chip Connolly. Chip Connolly formed a bunch of boutique hotels and out in California, and sold the boutique of hotels and wasn't sure what to do with his life. He was probably in his early 50s and was really, as a person that now sold his business and here he is, what do I do for the rest of my life? And he felt himself lost in working with a generation that he's not familiar with. And he joined the Airbnb and sort of became their wisdom leader. And so this whole book is about the value of the generations, the value that, for example, William, yours and my generation brings today, and then the value that other generations bring to us. And it's really the marriage of the two. So definitely, if any of you want to read that book, my recommendation is it does get a little bit long. I think you kind of get the point if you read the first half. I might have even recommended this to a few different people. So it is a good perspective in terms of the value that generations bring to each other. So I'm just going to make that comment.
And I don't even want to make this a generational thing. It's a mindset thing. I think, I mean, I know 40-year-olds that I have this conversation with. I mean, it's not a 20-year-old thing. It's not a millennial, Gen X. I mean, it's really just a mindset difference, you know?
Let's go to brick and mortar. Okay. Because we got some good stuff coming. We can come back to it. So next thing is, what are the right moves to make today with brick and mortar?
Yeah, that's
landlord relationships, paying rent by low margin salons versus retail. So let's get your perspective on that.
Well, I mean, that really is a tough one. You know, I mean, I think if you go just to the base of the relationship of what salons have when it comes to brick and mortar, is that we are treated like a retail center, but 85% of our square footage is based on service. So right away we are behind the 8 ball when it comes to just being able to afford the rent and the things that are going on. So I think landlords are starting to have to wake up to that a little bit. You know, with what's happening in today's pace and change that's being unprecedented is, you know, you have to have adaptability rather than efficiency, right? So that to me goes into how I lead. That also goes into the decisions I make, you know, like, you know, right now we're very fortunate we have big salons. So big salons have been great during COVID. We have, you know, people can sit 6 feet apart. We have all this opportunity. We don't have, you know, 900 square feet or 1,200 square feet where everybody doesn't have that flexibility. I think that there's a lot of things that are happening right now. It's almost like a perfect storm. The leadership at the product company level has changed. It's all been bought by major manufacturers outside of one. Right. So you have that going on. There aren't shows. I mean, the last year I was touring to do shows, we did 37 events. I don't think there's a 37 events in the world today that I could, you know, pick up. So the idea of how the beauty business is run and where it's moving to has changed so dramatically that we haven't caught up. We haven't caught up as business owners. We're still looking for, you know, where's our platforms? How do we make a better platform? You know, and it comes down to, you know, brick and mortar, I think will always be relevant. I mean, as obviously we do service, right? So now how do you make the choices that are best for what we're doing? And I think it's a scary time. I mean, I think it's a really worrisome time. Every time I sign a lease, I'm like, holy shit, 5 years, what is 5 years from now going to look like? Because 5 years ago, you know, it was completely different than today. You know, I'm signing my main salon, I've got my leases coming up in November. I mean, and I'm negotiating my ass off to try to get everything that is going to help me, because I'm trying to predict where 5 years from now, I don't even know what COVID's going to do come January. You know, I mean, I'm hoping after November 3rd, it goes away, but who knows, right?
But you're really hitting the bullseye of what's on a lot of people's mind right now. And I'm even looking at some people on the call. I'm not going to call them out, but literally working with them like right now with their lease. And yeah, I mean, in terms of signing a multiple year lease and how you set the lease up. Here's the thing with negotiating with landlords, it ain't easy.
Yeah.
You know, they've got a lot of power behind them, and leases are dramatically disproportionately in favor of the landlords. But anyway, keep going.
But at the end of the day, it's all determined by what you want to be when you grow up. You know, like what kind of business do I want to have? What size business do I want to have? If I want to have a team of 15 or 18 or 20 people, I've got to have a salon big enough to do that. You know, or, you know, I mean, I think what the Gordons have done for years. I mean, when Jerry was around and Tony and everybody is, you know, the shift work is beautiful. I mean, you can have that component, but that's a harder nut to crack than most people, you know, can do. So it really just, you know, you have to still have that brick and mortar presence if you want to build the that your dream has, right? So you got to be really clear about what's your dream. Where do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to have as an end result? And then you gotta build it. I mean, it takes a lot of guts today. Today is harder than ever because, you know, everything that's happening in our industry right now is pulling people out of the salons. So that's where groups like this, you know, I mean, to me, the number one rule in staying relevant is continue learning. And that's why people like you are so important and vital to this industry. That's why calls like this and groups like yours and, you know, if we don't do more of this, I think that, you know, our days are numbered. And I hate to say that, but because this is my livelihood.
So I'm going to move on to another subject because you got a lot of really great wisdom and thoughts. Let's get into, you referred to it as reverse marketing to independents.
Yeah, I think if you, you know, and I tell you somebody who's amazing at this kind of knowledge is Heath. And I saw he was a part of your group.
Yeah.
I love Heath. He's an amazing guy. And, but he draws a lot of light to this, and me and him taught a class together a few years ago, and what he brought to the table was just so perfect. But the suite industry is amazing at marketing. If you go on to Salon Sola right now and you look at their site, they do a hell of a lot better job marketing than we do as an industry, right? Just going to say it. But also one of the number one growing profit businesses in their industry is collections, you know, and so I don't know what the mix is on here as far as booth rentals and things. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to say anything, but I think that there is definitely a avenue for people to be able to do that. But I think for younger people going into that, it is not proven to be a successful endeavor. Okay. So if we're trying to bring people back to a more successful path that's going to prove for them to have a career and be able to stay with longevity into this business, and we don't have the exodus that we're seeing today of people leaving the industry in big numbers, I think it's important for us to get better at reverse marketing. Like let's market to the people who are struggling to pay their lease. Let's market to the people who, you know, whose clients weren't comfortable sitting in an 8x10 room when COVID came up because they're using shared AC with all of the other rooms that are in there that are uncontrolled, and people aren't, you know, you've got kids, you got people running around hallways. It's a really uncontrolled environment. So there's a lot of opportunity, you know, or just wanting someone to ask a question about color too that you don't have because you're in a room by yourself, or wanting someone to help you shampoo when you're running behind, or not having to take your towels home every night so they don't mildew. I mean, there's so many things that we could do to answer some of the frustrations that people are having in the world. I do a lot of interviews with people. I was offering $100 for tax returns for a couple, you know, for the last couple of years of booth renters, just so I could get, because I need to know the data.
You did what?
I offered them $100 to give me their tax returns. So
William Edge audit.
Yeah. So, well, no, I just want to know, how much money are you really making? Because the stories are just all bullshit, right? Because they
And
don't understand.
who took you up on that? Anybody?
I had about 63 people take me up on it. So
63 people.
yeah,
Oh my, that was a,
yeah.
it's
So
okay.
because I want to speak from a place of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And what the biggest challenge that I find is for people in the suite industry is that they don't delineate the difference between gross and net, right? So you feel like you're making a lot more money because your pocket's the cash register, right? And you're constantly putting money into that cash register, i.e. that pocket. And at the end of the day, you made $1,000 or $500 or $600 or whatever it is. But that's not what you make, right?
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting finding.
Yeah, a couple things I want to mention. First of all, you called out Heath, and Heath is actually going to be on our Wednesday noon call today. For those of you who are joining us, just FYI. And yeah, Heath's amazing and always has a great perspective. Gross versus net. I think that's a really important point. In fact, when we updated the Qnity curriculum, we did a whole segment on what is the difference between gross and net. Not a whole segment, but we addressed that. I think that there's
Right.
a lot of misconceptions. There's a ton of comments, by the way. I mean, this is a comment-rich session we're having today, which I think is great. So, are you actually recruiting independents to work at William Edge right now?
That's our next move.
Okay,
That's what I'm compiling right now. So I first had to find out, there's a lot of data out there, right? And I could give you guys, I see some people want to see the research on that. I could give you guys the general sense of the retail. Part of the agreement was I wouldn't share people's tax returns. It was just really a personal journey to make sure I wasn't out, because the last thing I want to do is sit in front of somebody and say, I can help you be more successful if I don't know where their success is, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it was eye-opening. I mean, there is not a lot of people knocking it dead. And just put the number one growing revenue stream is collections, right? That means a lot of people are breaking their leases. That means a lot of people are moving on down the road to something else because they can't make their rent. So I think that there's two avenues here that we've got to get better at telling the story too. I think we've got to tell the story and reverse recruit back to the suites. And I think we need to get in front of the consumer's vision. I think the consumers, when they understand the focus of the suite experience in comparative, people sometimes don't compare. They're just like, oh, I like that person, so I'm going to go over here. But when they start realizing they're missing someone checking them in, someone getting them a refreshment, that someone helping them out if this person's busy, they're missing that when the phone rings and the person picks it up and is foiling their hair and trying to make an appointment at the same time. That never happened in other places. There's things that we can do. And it's not because I have a problem with the suite business. I tell people all the time, if you could show me today that the suite business is better for the hairdresser, because my focus has always been as a second generation hairdresser until I was about a sophomore in high school. I don't remember my mom not having a second job waiting tables on the weekends and during the week, because as a hairdresser, she couldn't raise kids as a single mom. I am devoted to the best path for the hairdresser. So if you could show me that booth rental is the best path for a hairdresser, and that's the place that they could be the most successful, I would turn my businesses tomorrow to a booth rental business, because my life would get exponentially better, right? I would just have a Monday collection, tour. I would just travel to, tour and get my checks every Monday, and we'd be on down the road, right? But it just hasn't shown up to be that. And this is not I don't want this to be a booth rental, non-booth rental conversation. That's not it. It's about what choices are being made in our industry that are supporting the growth or the demise of the labor force that is entering, and how long are they staying, right? And I think if we can look at it in those terms, then it's not against my model against your model or whatever. It's about what's working and what's hindering the growth of the future hairdressers.
Gotcha. A lot of comments. I'm just dying to actually read the comments, but I want to stay with you right now. We'll come to the comments in a little bit. I did see one pop up from Rome, and he gave you an amen, by the way. So, all right. Let's get on to something we'll call playing the virtual game. All right, and not a game you love, and you're torn. You understand the why, but you struggle with. So the whole virtual, and I've teed it up enough for you. Go with
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I think if you have any years in this business and you remember really building your business on personal relationships, the sitting back and watching the world of virtual command come into place, um, there is such a shallow hollowness to it, right? So I'm battling with the fact that I've got the content, right? I've got tons of content that I could put out there. I just battle with the hours and the time that it takes to build this virtual command, this virtual presence, this virtual, when you start talking about, having to have a YouTube channel and great Instagram videos. I mean, all of these things that go on, the amount of hours that takes, or do I spend that time working with my team? Right? Do I spend that time, taking care of my customers? Like during COVID, I've called the top 300 of our customers personally just to check on them, right? And now I'm going back and I'm going to go to the next 200. So I have 500 of our customers that I want to have a personal phone call from me. The amount of hours that took compared to, it's like, where do I want to spend that time, right? So if I have this bank account of 24 hours in a day and I look at my business and believe me, I wish I was excited about virtual because I think it's an area that I have the content to be able to be a relevant player and all that stuff. And I need to do it. I really need to do it. I'm just so struggling with it. And I don't know if I'm the only one. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels that way, but I'm really struggling with how do I put the effort of my life into something that is virtual and out there, and versus taking those same hours and giving it to someone right in front of me. I really battle with that. So I have to get better because it seems that's the way the world's going. I am lucky. I mean, I am excited to see that it's starting to diminish a little bit as far as relevance. And it is coming back to the face-to-face, the relational, the relationship. But again, I go back to one of my key things, and that is I have to focus on adaptability rather than efficiency, right? Mm-hmm. So I know that's not really efficiency, but today's world, I think, takes a lot more adaptability.
Right. And yeah, and I mean, this has resonated with a lot of people here. The idea of calling your top 300 customers and then moving on to the next 200. I mean, it's been no secret with anybody that's been on these sessions that I've been highly recommending direct communication with your top customers. We had a guest in here who's from the fitness industry, and that was one of the first things he did, and he's outperformed his competitors by a milestone. So I love that practice. And I just wonder if it's not or and maybe and. So it's
got to be.
And,
And that point was not to say, like, I am very aware. You were asking me what one of my struggles is and what are the things that keep me up at night. It is allowing or charting the path to become relevant in the virtual world.
Yeah.
And I have such a deep lack of desire to do that it makes it hard to do it, because it's a have to at this point, not a get to. And I try to frame everything in a get to, and I haven't gotten to that yet. Right?
Tell me what those 300 calls look like and felt like for you.
They were really weird in a way that people.
I wasn't expecting that response.
Well, it was out of the blue, right? And so so just for people who want to do that, you're going to be, met with this, okay, like, hey, this is William from William Edge, just wanted to reach out to you during these crazy times and see how things were going for you. They're like, okay. So some people, because they're not my clients, right? Some of them are with other stylists, so they don't have a relationship with me. So I didn't call 300 of my clients, I called 300 of the salon clients. And so it was a interesting dialogue that quickly broke into appreciation, right? So you go through that journey because they're like wondering, what are you calling them for? You have a special you're running, or you got, but when they realize you're just genuinely checking on them to see if there's anything they need that you can assist with, is there any, something that maybe you can connect them with someone, or you could help them with, or just saying, do you need anything? Is there anything we could do for you? Is there anything I could bring to you? It quickly went from I shouldn't say weird, distrust, like, because people don't necessarily understand why you're calling.
Maybe skepticism.
Maybe perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it went quickly from there to a great comfort, see you soon. Everything was great. Yeah.
All right,
So,
let's, I want to get to the comments because they're particularly rich comments today, but I want to get to one final point with this. You said to me that you've never invested in your business. Why don't you take it from there?
Well, I mean, it's true. It's, anytime somebody needed something versus the business needing something, we would always go to the person. Anytime, like, there's never been, well, we need to do this for the business, and that's going to allow us not to be able to do this. Or if somebody needed something more training, or there were shows coming up that I thought would be good for people, we would always make it a way to figure out how to help them grow. We do tribal forums every year, which you've been a part of. That's been a staple of my company now for 28 years. It's a huge expense for people. It has nothing to do with, but I've always come from the idea that if people can become better thinkers, they're going to become better people, better team members, better hairdressers, better. So it's not about how can I help them learn how to do a bob better necessarily in that event. It's about how can I invest in them to grow personally, because I want their whole life to be enriched, not just their technical life, right? And up until about maybe 6 years ago, I think that was a great investment, because it showed people that you cared about them way more than the dollars they produced for you. It really showed that they meant something to you, that you had their back, that you were right there with them. There was a shift that's happened over the last 2 to 3 years, I would say, and I'm starting to really recognize it. And that is, what I'm hearing things today like, well, I didn't ask you to do that. That's just something you did, right? Or you're starting to see a lot of people who are really comfortable with people propping them up and investing in them and doing for them and giving them. And that's the difference to me in the younger mindset. It isn't as relevant that you're owning that I'm going to be more than just a business to you. I'm going to be a partner to you. I'm going to help you grow. That relationship is harder to find today, because it's not as recognized in what you're doing when they've come from a place where they've been handed quite a bit, right? And so we're trying to figure out now, how does that work? And one of the things that's been that is interesting, I created a program called engageship, and and we've talked about this before, but the premise of engageship is learning to engage people as they see themselves, not as you see them.
Mm.
So when an 18-year-old walks in my business or in my beauty school, I'm pretty sure how they see themselves is so dramatically different than how I see them, right? I see them needing training, needing this, and they see themselves as the commander of their journey, right? They are on the way, and you'll be working for them in just a couple of years. And so if I engage them as I see them, my chances of a successful a relationship gets harder and harder to bring up to fruition, right? I don't have the chances that I would like to have in building that bridge, which is hard as an entrepreneur. It's hard as someone who's been down the road for a while. It's hard as someone who's shown successes to actually have to step back and make it all about that person, right? So it keeps, the ego can get in the way a little bit, because you're like, why am I doing this? Because this person doesn't warrant that level of respect, but they do if you want to compete in today's world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that term, commander of their own journey.
Yeah.
That's one that I love the mix of words there. All right, let's do this. Let me do a scan of the
Well, I think
comments.
if you go back to Donald Miller, and talking about, he has a great company called Story Brand, who
Yep.
we build a lot of our concepts off of. Understanding that they are the hero of their journey and you're the guide. So how do you become the guide in a way of being relevant to guiding them through this process? So, I look at William Edge as just the guide to allowing this hero to come to fruition. And, when we place their nemesis in the pattern, it's all of the things we've talked about this morning. I mean, the nemesis is their mindset. The nemesis is their upbringing. The nemesis is what the industry structure is today. And so how do we help them fight that battle so they don't get caught up in that trap?
Got it. All right, William, let's see what some of the comments are here. Great share. I love this.
I see Roman wrote, he feels today people don't like businesses calling unsolicited, and I will absolutely agree with that. And I will say that I found that until they realized it was a genuine call of interest and care.
Got it. All right, William, I'm gonna scan some of the comments. Hello, Peter, this morning. I know you're sitting in for Lorna. Peter, I'm so glad you're joining us today. I'm going to do a full roll call in a moment, but first I'm going to get to some of the comments. William takes an out of the box approach. Love that. I do too. Michelle said where Sarah Cooper's recording is. Let's see here. What else do we got here? Different perspective on work ethic. You guys can read these. I don't know that we need to necessarily love the comments. I'm not sure we're going to explore each one. Carla, great share. 7 students in the educational program, highly engaged. Excellent work ethic. Austin, I did call out Austin, so I think I should read what he said. Work ethic is changing, not for better or worse, but totally relate with trying to stay relevant and appealing as a 30-year-old brand. Got to stay cool. Khan, agreeing with it being mindset, not all generation. Tony Gordon, yes, Whole New Mind is a great book. Vanessa, silver lining is finally moved into shifts and the team's agreeable. What else do we got here? Some people were asking about your results from the study. And by the way, one of the protocols we have, William, and we ask of our members is not to reach out to the guest one-on-one. Run it through us. We try to protect our guests here a little bit. And let's see here. Kip, well said, of course. Diane Keller is very much relating with it. And you already mentioned Roman. So excellent. All right, William, we're coming to an end here. And I'm going to give a shout out to everybody in a moment. But let's give a shout out to you, William Edge. And let's award you with the $1 million light bulb.
All
okay,
right.
There you go. As a member of our brain trust.
Love it.
As tradition would have it. I'd like to award that to you. And then all of us will give you a virtual applause. Bravo, bravo. So for someone that doesn't like the virtual world, you did a pretty damn good job in a virtual world today. I think you reached a lot of us.
Well, it's always a pleasure to do anything with you.